Concussion Chats is a podcast hosted by the McGill students for the Concussion Legacy Foundation with the help of Nick from Concussion Talk Podcast. We're dedicated to providing hope and strength to those suffering from concussions through sharing experiences. Today, I have a recording of Refael. He grew up in Seattle and now lives in Silver Spring. And he studied many different areas in college, majoring in dance. His career has been in various IT and business capacities. He enjoys singing, cycling, reading, kettlebells, and ultimate frisbee when it is available.
Part of me feels that I'm not good enough because in some ways my symptoms over time weren't as bad as some other people's, but at the same time, I also know that everybody's situation is different. You know, so one thing I see with all the people who've had injuries that everyone with TBI just has their own different story. So I'll share mine. So probably the easiest way to go into the story is going back to 2007. Life was pretty good. I was remarried, moved to Silver Spring, had a nice government job and new baby, and I was in a minor car accident. And after this minor car accident, I ended up with very significant TBI symptoms. And that made it pretty clear that, you know, I really had been suffering from TBI symptoms for decades, but it hadn't been dealt with because they were subtle and they looked more like bad habits, bad personality traits. I thought I was, you know, just sometimes lazy, you know, didn't try hard enough. And, you know, but after this accident, I had some anger issues, not in the worst ways. It reminded me of soldiers coming back from Iraq who suffered from IED explosions. And, you know, very fortunately, soon after the accident, someone referred me to Neurofeedback. And so I started Neurofeedback, and, you know, that over a course of a few months mitigated some of the worst of the symptoms, you know, but really, you know, tracing it back. So I'd had a really serious bicycle accident in high school. And so that happened in the middle of high school. And even after that, it didn't seem like it was a big deal. The bicycle accident was very serious, no helmet, I was in a coma. But after spending 5 days in the hospital and 5 days in a dark room, you know, came out, seemed mostly okay. Neurologist and follow-up said, you're okay, there wasn't anything to be done. But then in retrospect, because I was taking university classes at night where as a really good student in high school, you know, I wasn't as effective at the university class, but it was really after high school when I went to college where I became a failure. I went overseas, went to a very difficult program, tried to prepare for it and didn't know how to ask for help, and really spent 8 years bouncing around different colleges, different places, you know, 2 places in Israel, a place in New York, you know, back to Seattle at University of Washington, you know, trying different things there. You know, eventually I got into dance and started enjoying that, and was also studying acting and music. And in retrospect, I see that number one, I wasn't able to do academic courses at that time. I couldn't concentrate, you know, and I thought it was a problem with me. But I didn't even know what the problem was. Maybe I needed to try harder. But dance worked well and actually was probably therapeutic in the end. You know, I also went to massage school, that because I was studying energy work, you know, that had its own things. But really, but the issue was I had lots of TBIs going back to childhood. The first one was actually very serious. I was 4 years old. We were at a 4th of July party, and there was a little cabin out in the woods in Kansas where everyone was lighting fireworks. And I decided to be cute and show that I could go inside the cabin faster than someone else, so I went in through the window. which would have been fine, except that someone had opened up the wine cellar inside. So I fell 6 feet into the wine cellar and hit my head, had some tooth issues and all that. And so there were no major symptoms after that injury. However, going back, I've written down a history of all the TBI injuries that I've had, and actually have this list, and I thought it would be helpful for me just to read off the list, because it's a big deal. When I was 4 years old, I fell into this wine cellar 6 feet and then hit my head. When I was 12 years old, I fell in gym class. I fell face first into the wall, broke teeth. That summer, we were in Canada and walking along a creek, and there was some moss there, and I fell and landed straight on my chin. A year later, was still 12 years old. I was under a porch, where we were living, and I stood up too fast and I hit my head on one of the rafters. When I was 16, I had the serious bike accident I was talking about. When I was 18, I was cleaning my room in the dorm, and the windows opened in. And so I'd been down on the floor sleeping, and I came up really quickly, and I hit my head really hard underneath the corner of the window, which was extremely painful. When I was in college, I was in a motorcycle accident. And that one felt really unfair because my last memory before the accident was looking at the speed limit sign, which was 30 miles an hour, and I was actually going 30 miles an hour. I was in a big hurry, but I said, no, you're going to be calm. And I was going calmly. However, coming the other way was a lady in a car, and she turned left in front of me, and I hit the car. They said I flipped over 3 times. Very ironically, my stepfather's parents came by the other way and saw the accident. Said, "Oh, I sure hope that's not Refael," and it actually was. That was weird. In 1995, actually, I had 2 different football injuries. One where someone hit me in the face, and I don't know how that happened, but I was unconscious, went to the doctor. And another where I caught a pass, but then fell backwards and hit my head on the dirt. And this was in Israel, where at the end of the summer, it's like concrete. There was one time where I was dragged by a car. Another time there was a car accident. This time playing Frisbee, the disc was thrown straight into my head. There was a time where a landlord lost a case for me at the courthouse, and he waited for me. This is an ex-Marine, and attacked me as I was leaving the courtroom and hit me in the head. There was another time I was walking out of the gym, 2012, and there was a double doorway, and for some reason I looked back and I walked straight into the pillar between the 2 doors. Some other sports injuries, another car accident. There was a bus accident where I was sitting in the bus, and I became really sensitive to any kind of stress. And so even though it was a minor accident, it affected me. A couple months ago, I fell while rollerblading, dislocated my elbow. Last month I fell off my bike. So thanks for listening to that, because it was good to get it off my chest, because as we know, these things are additive, and it's been pretty tough. But the good news is, over time, as I found treatments. The bad news is it's taken a very long time. After that accident in 2007, I continued to do neurofeedback, which helped, but didn't get me to the next level. And then a year or so after the accident, so basically I'm divorced twice because of this. My marriages were okay. They're good marriages, married to a good person, but they got tired of waiting for me because I didn't have energy, I didn't focus. Life sometimes get to you. If I were in different circumstances, I probably would have handled things differently, but just being tired and unable to focus, and in circumstances that were weird, like both times I graduated from college and from business school was during the middle of a recession. that made things more difficult. So, but then in 2009, my second wife decided to divorce me right when my mother was dying. And she did the divorce in the worst possible way. And it's actually still ongoing. She still harasses me in every possible way, and I don't have money for an attorney to force her to keep the custody agreement. But I've learned to deal with life better. I did neurofeedback for a number of years, and neurofeedback, there's a lot of different kinds. And so what would happen is I would work with someone for a while, and then they passed me on to another practitioner, with different equipment to see if it might help. And I was fortunate in that when I ran out of money, this one practitioner kept working with me for a couple of years without charge. And she felt a little frustrated because she'd been doing it for decades, and usually someone who achieved the results that she achieved would have better results with their symptoms, and I didn't. But I kept doing a million different things. And one thing that's been helpful over time is, starting in 2013, I started working with this personal growth workshop. And I found that the healing that I do in treating the TBI works so much better when I'm also raising my self-awareness and just being better in myself. And now that some of these treatments are helping me, all the work I've done the last 7 years on myself has definitely come into play. It's been hard not being in touch with my kids as much as I would have liked. After the first divorce, my son was with me, my daughter with her mother in Israel. And then my youngest son I'm very close with. It's a weird situation that his mother puts all these horrible obstacles in front of me, and really, for example, falsely calling the police and saying that I'm driving dangerously. And so I would be arrested while my son's in the car, really pretty nasty things. But, it's been very rewarding staying focused on him. I taught him to read at a young age, and he's academically excels, and we're still very close, even though I actually haven't been able to be with him for the last 6 months. She's not letting me be in touch with him, so I only have Zoom. And so I've actually risen to the challenge and just found all sorts of new cool things to do with him. But the big change for me was 2 years ago. A friend put me in touch with a clinic in Baltimore. And this clinic, led by a rabbi as a psychologist, he offered to treat me for free. And so going to this clinic, I started doing a new kind of neurofeedback, and also what they call laser therapy, which is also known as photobiomodulation. And so I started noticing improvements there, things that were better. And then a year ago, same friend put me in touch with the Facebook group Ghost in My Brain. And that's, some of you may know, that's a book written by Elliot Clark, highly recommend it. And so Elliot Clark was also in a minor car accident, and he had major TBI symptoms, very different from mine. But he found these clinics in Chicago that really helped him, Mind to Eye being a major part of that. And it helped him immensely. And even though my symptoms were different than his, I really got the feeling that the work that they do would help me. And so I got charged, because even though it's not the most expensive treatments to go there, it's still a lot of money to travel and and pay for the clinics. But I decided I had to do this, and so I found ways to ask for help. There's some wealthy people that I knew casually, and I said, "Oh, if I'm ever going to make use of these connections to help myself, now's the time, because this is what really counts." And I found some Jewish organizations in my community of all different sorts, that helped, in small ways here and there. And I even found Jewish organizations in Chicago helped me find places to stay and other practical things with the trip, and I made it happen. And it was a huge deal. And it turns out that the book mentions 2 clinics, but there's a third clinic that I find to be critically important that also, you know, all the 3 clinics work together. And so in November of last year, I finally managed to go to Chicago to these clinics. And it was a huge thing, just embarking on this trip, thinking I can do it. And it was amazing for me that once I saw that the trip was possible, that it could actually happen in some way, all of a sudden I felt lighter. It's like, oh, I can make things happen. And that was definitely a huge change, you know, just being able to make things happen. And the first trip was a huge success. Even after the first meeting, you know, with Donnelly Marcus, who does these puzzles, you know, I was taking the Uber to the next clinic and I noticed improvement. And there's 3 clinics there. One is Mind Eye Institute with Dr. Zelensky. And that's a key part. That's these glasses that I'm wearing. They call them brain glasses. And what these glasses do is they focus light through the optical nerve to stimulate the brain to heal. Not the sort of thing I thought would help, but I figured I'd try it. Another clinic, as I said, Donnelly Marcus, Designs for Strong Minds. Really an incredible person, and she has this amazing set of puzzles that are worked for children and for anyone up to NASA rocket scientists, and they're incredibly effective. And then a third clinic that's not mentioned in the book there, but I find very important, is with Amy Lucas and Carrie Heitkotter, I think is her last name. And they work really hard to help the body release trauma. Both in terms of reflexes, we have some innate reflexes that help us, but in case of the trauma, they can get frozen and not help us. And then also just with tension in the body. It's really quite remarkable. I have a separate condition possibly brought up by the TBI. It's called Ankylosing Spondylitis, which causes the spine to fuse. I don't have it in the worst way, but I had tightness in my neck that wasn't moving so much that I thought was from that condition. And in my second trip to Chicago, after my last visit to Amy and Carrie, I walked out of there and my neck could move in ways I didn't think possible, and that has continued to improve. And so these treatments have been very helpful. Incredibly, the first time I put on my glasses, I was on a Friday afternoon in November or early December, and I went to synagogue 2 hours later, and I found all of a sudden that I could sing a lot better. And that has continued to improve. Dr. Z told me that, yeah, that happens with some of their patients, you know, who know how to sing. And to the point that my singing voice hasn't continued to improve for the last 10 months. You know, sometimes I feel like I don't know how to sing because I have a new voice. I have to figure out how to use it. A funny case was there was an elderly gentleman in his 90s, a retired doctor, who started sitting next to me in synagogue a few months before that. And a few weeks after I started wearing the glasses, he said to me, "Oh, wow, your harmonies were much better at nights." I go to a synagogue where they do a lot of singing. And I realized that I knew that my harmonies were substantially different, but I think my voice was much more resonant. And what I suspect is happening is that I'm able to be more relaxed and let more of the voice work. So I've been to Chicago 4 times. One of the visits, I pretty much only went to see Amy and Carrie. And, you know, my life, you know, has changed. And it's just been very gradual. You know, some of the time going to Chicago overlapped with going to the clinic in Baltimore. And when I would have improvements, I couldn't say what did it come from, one of the treatments from Chicago or one of the treatments from Baltimore. One thing that was really interesting was I came back from the clinic in Baltimore one day and I could type. Because for years I had a problem with typing. I would type fast and make lots of mistakes, lots of mistakes, very sloppy. And after a while, I realized, oh, this must be a TBI thing. And I came back from the clinic one day and was typing like, wow, I'm not making mistakes. I'm able to focus better. And so that was a huge change. And so my last trip to Chicago was in July. I plan to go again. That's just the most recent one. As some of you may know, what I've been doing that's been helpful for me is just trying to do lots of things for healing. So in addition to doing the puzzles, you know, from Donnelly Marcus in Chicago, I also went back and played piano. I saw that helped and try and do new things. So I decided, since I can't go to the gym, I can't play ultimate frisbee because of COVID, I went back to rollerblading. And that was an epic failure. all the things I've tried doing. Everything has helped in some way, but probably in the past, I would always lean forward so I wouldn't get hurt. But now my back is tighter, and I was doing just a couple minutes, and I fell backwards really hard and fell on a straight arm on my elbow, dislocated it very, very badly. But one thing I noticed was mentally, I handled it very, very well. And I think that was a sign of how I've improved. And it was very painful because 5 years ago, when I was diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis, I started exercising all the time. And after injuring the elbow, I couldn't exercise at all for 6 weeks. And that was really, really hard, but I needed to do that to protect the elbow. And I did that, and I handled it. And probably the biggest thing, has been on top of that, that finally after I came back from Chicago, I was able to get a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, something I wanted to do for a few years. One detail I didn't mention is that I think 2013, I started going to NIH because I'm here in the DC area where they're located. And it was a big thing because I didn't have insurance, and the neurologist there, they didn't have anything to help me, but just being with people who understood was a big thing. And for years, I was trying to do hyperbaric oxygen therapy and trying to get to a study, but finally with this federal money that's been coming in from the government, I was able to purchase a chamber. And that usually they recommend 20 to 40 dives in the chamber for TBI, and after around 35 dives in the chamber, I felt good for the first time I could remember in my life. And, it's still a struggle, but I keep feeling better. I then discovered this book called Breath by James Nestor, that advocates nose breathing. And that's just helped me be relaxed and move on to a different level. And yeah, so a challenge recently has been that, I've made all this improvement. What am I going to do with my life? Because really not dug myself into a deep hole, but I had a lot of challenges not having any money. My career and professional resume are in weird situations. So it's hard getting a job for anyone at my age, and in a COVID recession kind of situation. So I'm trying to figure out, what can I do with my life now? And the big lesson there has been to do all the small things that I can do. I occasionally reach out to people in the TBI groups if I, to give recommendations or give support. And, it's one of the things I emphasize is like, you can't do the big thing you want to do. What are the small things you can do, and to be happy with that. So that's really the next step for me. And what's nice is I feel that I can. When I started going to the clinic in Baltimore, the head of the clinic after 2 months said, most of our patients after 2 months, they're ready to go on and move on with their lives. And I didn't feel I had the energy for that. But now, I feel that if I get a job, I have a chance that I could do that job. I could stay focused, I could learn. And so it's hard because I'm actually someone who's very smart with a lot of potential. I was a top student in high school. And was very good at doing all these things, and my life fell apart afterwards, and I felt like an abject failure for years. And so if part of the healing, in addition to the treatments that I get, has really just been rebuilding myself and feeling that I can do things. And so it's now that I've gotten here, it's really the first inkling that I feel that I can share this. That's what started happening in this group. In talking to Emily, a week ago I started sharing more, and it occurred to Emily and to me separately, that maybe I could share with the group. And so I hope you guys find this helpful.
A big thank you to Refael for sharing with the group. Today I have Emily, who is also part of McGill Students for Concussion Legacy Foundation, Nick from the Concussion Talk podcast, and his co-host Aaron of Concussion Talk podcast, who is coordinator for the Newfoundland Brain Injury Association joining.
Newfoundland and Labrador.
I was just trying to shorten the names. Anyways, let's go.
Labrador doesn't like that.
All right. So, I really liked his talk. It It was good.
It was very, very like holistic. Like he used medicine and the holistic approach. Like really kind of showed the how like treatment is not only medical or not only one treatment and not just holistic but medical and holistic. Like it's because
Yeah.
he had to get all his treatment first, and he also talked about how he felt better when he started more mindful and get involved in doing puzzles and stuff and just being
Yeah,
more
just
combining and synagogue like also his community so social and as a mind and
uh
also the medical stuff. So
yeah.
that's one thing I took away from
And
it.
like just the importance of like working on all aspects of you, and like he was talking about like part of healing was like rebuilding himself, and like that started with like mental like strength and stuff, and yeah.
Yeah, he's really been through it.
Yeah, that was a crazy list of, and they're all such crazy, horrible
Scenarios.
accidents and scenarios, and just like, wow. Yeah, no. Hearing those, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was so shocking too as he read them. He's like, I didn't have any really major symptoms, and
Yeah,
I was like, how?
I got thrown off my bike and I cracked my skull and I fell through a window and I was 4 years old and stuff, and it's like
Yeah.
I flipped over the hood of a car. So all of a
He
sudden
fell
it's like,
through a wine cellar.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
At the age of 4 too, so you would be tiny. It was like 6 feet.
And your head wouldn't be as strong. Your soul
And
wouldn't be as
he
strong.
was crawling through a window too, so he probably went head
And he
first,
was diving through
realistically.
the window
Yeah,
or
it,
jumping through the window.
it's crazy. Man,
It's a
I
lot
wish
of-
everyone listening to the podcast could have seen your face, Emily. Your jaw just dropped.
I mean, just so much to. Can you just see like your little cousin or little brother that happening? Like,
It's crazy, and it's not even like that was like it though. He had so many crazy accidents that, and like some of them would be like freak accidents. Like when he was like 18, he was like cleaning his dorm room and hit his head on like the corner of like the window sort of thing, and like shit, that would really freaking hurt.
And then
it's like enough for him to remember it.
Yeah, to be significant, yeah. And just like the two sorry, and just like the like no symptoms, it's crazy. But I mean, I guess like then like didn't really know as much about concussions, and concussions weren't a huge thing, so he wouldn't think anything of it.
And it
Yeah.
makes me think of like how we're talking a lot about in sports right now, all these like subconcussive hits, and how these different issues show up down the road. And it really kind of like, it makes me think of that. Aaron, I don't know if you have studied that much, that area.
With subconcussive hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, not as much, but like it really highlights to me like it can happen in and out of sports, especially with him. Like he got hit the first time, and then all the other hits add on to it progressively. And probably a lot of the symptoms and experiences he has now are because of those on top of each other.
Yeah, that's what's scary.
I mean, I wouldn't even call those accidents subconcussive hits. Like those.
I think subconcussive is just anytime there's no symptoms.
Okay.
and you don't give
But
yourself
there's
you
no
wouldn't give yourself if they happen outside of sports, you wouldn't give yourself any time to relax or to rest to protect yourself. There's no rest. You're just thinking, oh, it's just something people do this all the time. So I always thought,
I mean, I think like maybe maybe it's not that he didn't necessarily have symptoms, especially like the younger ones, like with like the crazy accidents and stuff. Like just it may just more so be like it wasn't something that was talked about or known.
Yeah. A lot of times too, like with falls or hits as well, you can have lasting symptoms that you never really realize are there until you're much older.
Yeah.
So, like for example, I know someone who fell when they were a baby out of a stroller, and now they have problems with their working memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So,
I mean, I like didn't think about a lot of things like with me as like being attributed to concussions until like I started running the support group. Like I never thought about like, I don't know, like the whole like seeing TV static thing. Like I thought everyone saw that. I used to think like it was because my eyelashes were so long. Like and I don't remember ever not seeing that.
I'm so glamorous
Yeah,
that I
like
couldn't
imagine
even.
like this kid like trying to open their eyes really wide because they think that like it's their eyelashes. Like I was just really confused. But I mean, even being friends with Emily for like a year, I still didn't like think like, oh, maybe that's what's wrong with me. Like this girl, like that's all that she really talked about.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, my head always feeling like it's gonna explode. I never thought that was like maybe I didn't attribute it to concussions because I wanted to keep playing sports was definitely part of it. But it's crazy and it's amazing that he's made it through all that and is able to share his story and
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like you talk about times like when you were like figure skating and you fall back and hit your head, and those seem like to me really significant, like hitting your head on ice.
yeah.
And
It's concrete underneath it.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
maybe you had stuff and didn't notice, and like in a similar way. I also really liked how he acknowledged right off the bat. This is something we hear. I don't like it, but I appreciate him saying that he like didn't feel good enough because his symptoms weren't as severe.
Oh
And I
my
think
gosh,
that's
I know.
so important because there's so many people that are dealing with like more subtle symptoms and they just like don't feel like it's bad enough to talk about, but it's still
And I
having
mean that goes
massive
with
effect on their
anything,
life.
not even just
Yeah.
concussions though.
Yeah, I really appreciated his honesty with that, and then acknowledging that everyone does have their own journey, and that I still think there was a lot in there that a lot of us could relate to.
I really like that he started off his like talk with like the whole like not feeling good enough. Like as soon as he like started saying that, I was like, oh man, this is gonna be good. Like relatable. And it was good. And I also like when he was talking about like going through the list and like saying it out loud was therapeutic for him. It makes sense. Like because it's kind of like making sense of like everything and like the difficulties that you faced and stuff. And I don't know.
It's kind of like feels like the recognition of anything. Like he realized he had symptoms when he started like he realized they had brain injuries when he recognized they had some symptoms of something. There's okay, that's probably they figured out it's a brain injury. So that's when he knew he had a brain injury. He knew he like he felt better when he got these like great like the really good hospitals and stuff, and knew his mind felt better when he actually saw like people talking about mindfulness and puzzles and stuff. So it was more seemed almost that he as like, which is only true not just of him but of anybody, that when you actually recognize symptom, you understand that there was a problem. It wasn't really he didn't really have a problem until he did obviously, but he didn't really know what it could be until he figured out like I don't even know what I'm saying there. He figured out he's
made sense of his challenges, you know?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah,
and like why things were the way they were. I mean, like, I can relate to that like so much. Like I don't know, going through school, like I always worked so much harder than everyone else, and I would not get the grades I should be getting. And then when I came to university, I like got like diagnosed with things that were like, oh wow, okay, that makes sense. Like that's why everything was so hard for me, like learning disabilities and ADHD. Like wow, that's everything like makes so much sense. And I mean like maybe making that list like helped him to make sense of things for himself.
Yeah, and I think that him like at one point he was like, oh, thanks for bearing with me or something, thanks for listening to all that. I think so much of the reason people enjoy the support group is they and when they talk and when they hear other people's experiences, they really feel that acknowledgement and validation that they don't feel from the medical field sometimes, or from their family members. And I think it is so therapeutic to share your story in front of people who understand, just so you don't feel crazy and so you don't feel alone. And that connection is so important. And sometimes, sometimes people go off on tangents, and they're just telling their story, and it's still really nice just to hear about other people like doing their lives even though they're struggling with this thing.
Yeah. No, I really liked hearing his story, and I mean, like, I love hearing everyone's story, but he did kind of like be like, oh, like, sorry, like, and it definitely is therapeutic for the listeners and the person sharing, for sure. Because it's also like getting it out in the open, but it's not to, like you said, like medical professionals who won't necessarily get it or believe you. Like we talked about in our talk this Thursday, just like how medical professionals can be like, oh, like it's just this, or just like not take you seriously. And so, yeah, being surrounded by people who do understand concussions and believe you is definitely really helpful.
Yeah. One of the other things he was talking about with the
your cat,
well, yeah.
Aaron paying attention to her. Yeah, she's not going to attack you, or he's not going to attack you. I don't see him.
No.
I'll put my hands up when I see him leaping at your head.
Yeah. But he talked about neurofeedback as well, which was really interesting because there's a clinic back where I'm from in Fredericton, New Brunswick, that does neuro and biofeedback. And I was originally going to do some training there, but it's a very interesting and promising field that I wish we had more of here in Canada as well. I know he was speaking from the United States where there's a lot more options with those kind of things. But it was very neat to see that he found that a proven effective treatment, because oftentimes neurofeedback can be used only in terms of like anxiety, depression, ADHD, and other related, more so moods disorders kind of thing, versus like concussive symptoms after. But I enjoyed hearing him talk about how that was one of the most proven effective treatments for him.
Yeah. And he said he did it for a pretty long time, and helpful. He also talked about The Ghost in My Brain, which is a book that like Emily and I refer to like in the support group quite a bit, and it's a really good book, and that like so many people like who have read it have said like that kind of like gives you, I guess, like it makes sense of things, and like gives you like the ability to like verbalize what's going on and stuff too.
Yeah. What is Ghost in My Brain?
The Ghost in My Brain is a book written by Clark Elliott. It's this guy, he got in like a minor like fender bender, and he had a really long recovery, and it was a like really like brutal recovery, and he found so the two clinics, or actually three, that Refael was talking about, those were the clinics that Clark Elliott went to that really helped him. So the Mind Eye Institute and Designs for Small Minds, and I can't remember the third, but yeah, those were what I think got him back to his thing.
So,
it's a really good book, and I have it on audio as well. I think I bought like 7 copies.
Oh yeah.
So just like did that out to people. But one of the people he saw was a neuro-optometrist, which I think our next podcast will be touching on that a bit more. Really interesting field. Real quick, I also want to say, like, I totally forgot about this. I did neurofeedback for I think 6 months or so out here, and I think it did help a lot with the ADHD. And my ADHD definitely did get worse with concussion.
What do you mean out here? Do you mean like in Tennessee?
Yeah. Right?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
down in Tennessee. which is where I am right now.
Yeah.
What I used to be. And the neuro-optometrist has been a big help for me as well. So it's kind of cool to hear him talk about those things. But Clark Elliott's book also, like, I cried multiple times reading it just because it did give me the verbalization Taya was saying.
Yeah, I mean, like, the copy that Emily gave me, like, it is bookmarked and highlighted and, like,
dog-eared and stuff.
Dog-eared, and, like, I hate the whole dog-ear thing, but, like, I wrote all over that book. It was a really good book, and it's available on Audible, too, if people aren't at a stage where they can read. Still check that out if you can.
And you can find some interviews with him on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
He's just his neuro-optometrist, not a medical doctor?
He's not the neurooptometrist. That's Dr. Z.
Yeah.
What is he? He was a professor when he was recovering, right?
Yeah, he was, like, I think in IT stuff, computer engineering.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I could grab the book right now and tell you.
Oh, it's okay.
Not that.
It's not a review session.
Yeah. Also, it was awesome to hear that, like, even through all these things that Refael's been through, and, like, he said, like, he's been, like, going through all these things for a while, and like, now, like, he feels like I don't know who that was. He now feels like he can do something, that, like, he is capable, and that's amazing, because that's definitely a struggle. But, like, hearing that he feels like if he gets a job, he feels that he could do it, he could stay focused, he can learn. And just when he was talking about, like, part of healing was rebuilding himself and feeling like he could do things, and I think that's so important.
And also, he had the ability. I'd say he didn't have insurance, which I know is a big deal in the States, but because he was able to, to go to NIH and go to Chicago and access these tons of different treatments and neurofeedback, and which, I mean, I can only speak for here, St. John's, and there's no neurofeedback. I don't know Erin, if you know of any neurofeedback here, and she doesn't. Yeah, I mean, just the accessibility of different options. I mean, even like from St. John's, getting to, like, Toronto or Halifax is still a bit of still a task. It's in and of itself, and it's not as easy to get places. But so, I mean, as long as you have the means, if it's accessible to places, like, and you have the actual financial means or whatever to access these clinics, you still need a more holistic approach of just being mindful and recognizing yourself and your mental capacities, your mental, just also not just medical, it's also your whole being, your whole social, mental, physical, everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of that.
You don't seem very
stay awake.
I know the narcolepsy just creeping.
Yeah. No, his talk was awesome, and I'm so glad that even through all those things that he went through, he is able to feel like he can do things, like he has the like ability, and that's just awesome. And like, I'm proud of him. I don't even know him. Like, go Refael.
Yeah, because he even touched on at the end there where he's just like, it's a bit more difficult to find a job currently with, like, being older, with my resume being COVID right now. But he still had a positive outlook, which is amazing.
And he was talking about, like, doing the things you can do, like, and, like, that's so important. Like, don't focus on, like, the stuff that you can't do. Like, you need to, like, just do the things that you can do, and, it's okay. But
That's a good point.
Yeah. So So thanks to Nick for helping us do the podcast, and thanks again to Refael for coming and sharing with the support group and being vulnerable. We'll have a new podcast posted Monday morning. Our upcoming podcasts can be found on concussiontalk.com, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. You can find more information about our group on concussionmtl.com. Our peer-to-peer support group is free and open to everyone. We hold 3 weekly meetings on Zoom, which will be linked in the description. Thanks again, Nick, Emily, and Aaron for joining me today, and thanks for Refael and everyone listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
HeadCheck Health bridges gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Trek Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more. The music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.